There was one demonstrator who was urging people to walk away from the line, to walk away with their heads held high, and others said, no, we're going to stay, and that demonstrator then walked away. So there's discussions about whether people are ready to be arrested, and as of right now, there is a line of people who are preparing themselves, and you have officers who are talking to them, basically saying, you have a chance to walk away from this. You have a chance to go back. Your point's been made, but you don't have to risk arrest. But it seems like there are some people here who are committed to the end, to be arrested for their cause.
Do you remember the iconic photo that went viral showing a man lying in the snow in front of the police during the crackdown on the Freedom Convoy? That man is Clayton McAllister, and today he shares how, with the help of his lawyer, he got his charges withdrawn. How many of you feel nostalgic about the Freedom Convoy? This massive grassroots movement brought together people from all walks of life to reclaim basic freedoms and oppose the federal government COVID-19 vaccine mandate, along with other pandemic restrictions imposed by Trudeau's regime. These measures led to medical coercion, penalizing those who wanted the freedom to make their own choices about their bodies. No jab, no job. No jab, no restaurant. No jab, no flights or trains. No jab, no social life. At a time when isolation had already sparked a rise in mental health struggles, who wanted to be more isolated? The media distort the reality on the ground, labeling participants as extremists, misogynists, anti-vaxxers, and even almost like terrorists. Rather than listening to the concerns of citizens, the response was to invoke the Emergencies Act against them.
We are here out of love for our families, our communities, and our nation. These past 2 years, the COVID mandates have divided us. This protest began because of the federal government's restrictions on trucker freedoms. We are therefore calling on all levels of government in Canada to end all COVID mandates and restrictions. We will continue our protest until we see a clear plan for their elimination. So far, no one from the federal, provincial, or municipal government has spoken directly with us. Instead, they are using you, the media, to portray us as racists, misogynists, and even terrorists.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations.
No matter what you do, we will hold the line.
Clayton McAllister, a truck driver from London, Ontario, attended the Freedom Convoy protest. What was meant to be just a few days on the ground turned into several weeks. Shortly after the Emergencies Act was invoked, McAllister was arrested on the charges of mischief, resisting arrest, and disturbing the peace. Today, he is explaining with us how he got his charges withdrawn.
Eventually, when we all kind of knew that it was inevitable that at one point that the police were going to come, my vision was exactly what I did, right? As soon as I knew that the police were lined up and ready to go, I wanted to be the first one that they arrested, and I wanted to do it in the most peaceful way possible with the least resistance. And that was to simply just lay on the ground. And that's what I did. I was the very first, on the day of the operation where they had come in, I was the very first one that they took into custody. After doing some digging with my lawyer to find evidence of when I was arrested and when I was released, which I was able to find evidence, is At 12 o'clock noon exactly, it must have been the go time that they had, because I dug through all kinds of lives, and at 12 o'clock, that's when they did the push. After I was arrested, there was about 5 cops that jumped on me and carried me out, and then I was handed from one cop to the next cop to the next cop, and then they put us in a line, and then they would take us through the intake, and that took about 45 minutes to an hour. And then I was thrown into the corner cubicle of a paddy wagon, which is, no bigger than about 2 by 2 with a single bench. And they left me in that paddy wagon for 6 hours with the heat cranked, no washroom, no food, no nothing. And then we were taken to a gravel pit where they had mobile offices set up. And then went through the intake in there. And then um, I had realized, or after all of that was done, I was put back into a police cruiser, and then I was driven 20, 30 minutes or so outside of Ottawa and dropped off at a gas station in the middle of nowhere with my bank accounts frozen, a dead cell phone, and then they had also taken my truck keys. So I was unable to go get back and get my truck that was on Wellington. And 2 days after, I was watching a live, and I watched them walk past my truck, and the video shows the police smashing the windows out of the truck, and then it not fully breaking, and it's hard to tell by the video, but it looks like that they put an explosive on my back window and blew the back window apart so that they could see if I was inside. But I was not inside. There was nobody there. They had on my mugshot the location and the plate number of my truck. I think that they just wanted to break it. There was no other trucks on the street at that time. I think they just wanted to break it just to make a point.
Mm-hmm. And so how did you get back in Ottawa once they just dropped you off to a gas station?
So I had 1% on my cell phone, and the way that I was able to track down how long I was out there was I dug back through my mother's text messages, because my mom had just watched me get arrested live on TV. So obviously I have a whole lot of messages from my mother. Who's the first person that you're going to message? Your mom, right? So at 6:52 p.m., there was a message to my mom saying I'm okay. And then I had called a friend that I had made in Ottawa. They came to pick me up, and then it took them about 25, 30 minutes to get me. So I was left out there in the cold. And then after I made that phone call, my phone was dead. So I was just hoping that wherever I explained to him that I was, that he could come and find me. And then we went back down to see if I could go get my truck out of there. And that's when I realized that when they gave me my keys back, they took all the truck keys off of my key ring, and I had no way to get my vehicle out of there. So the gentleman that came and picked me up, he let me and 4 others stay in his house until we had everything all figured out. And then as soon as I think it was 7 days that the trucks and trailers had to be an impound before we could go pick them up. So I had to wait that time. But then I had noticed when I got there that all of my windows had been smashed out. Well, 2 of them smashed out, and then the truck was left outside, and I had tons of snow and ice inside. So I had to go vacuum all that out before it started melting. And then obviously I had to get my windows replaced. So as soon as that happened, that led me to be stuck there for a few more days, because I live 6 hours from Ottawa. I'm not driving 6 hours with no windows. And then as soon as my window was fixed, then I had another problem with my truck that it had to actually go in for some mechanical repairs. So that ultimately ended up me having to stay in Ottawa for about 6 weeks.
So what was the charge that you were facing at that time?
So I was up against 5, 2 counts of mischief, disturbing the peace, resisting arrest, and failure to comply with a court order.
What I was seeing is they offer you a plea deal.
Yes. So a couple weeks ago, I was offered a deal. My lawyer, we had found some information that had some clear violations of the charter. So after he submitted an affidavit, then I was supposed to have trial on September 21st. And I found out 3 days before my trial that there wasn't enough room in the courtrooms to have a trial, so they had postponed it until further notice. And then I got a message from my lawyer that they were seeking an early resolution. What I was offered was a peace bond, and in my restrictions, they wanted to make it so that I was not able to protest, gather, or rally with any more than 25 people. Which is a absolute charter violation, right? So I refused that deal, which then ultimately led to the deal that I did take, which was because I told him that I'll take a peace bond. I'm not a criminal. I'm not doing anything wrong. I said, but if you want me to take a peace bond, there has to be absolutely zero restrictions on the peace bond. So they came back and they said that they would give me the zero restriction peace bond if I wrote a 100-word essay to the Crown explaining the difference between protest and mischief. That's it, 100 words.
So you did submit the essay?
Yes, the essay was submitted prior to the final decision because the Crown had to accept the essay before he would withdraw charges.
And finally, your charges was withdrawn?
Yes, all charges have been withdrawn. I'm on a no restriction peace bond for 12 years of not 12 years, 12 months of just keep the peace. And that is very easy for me to do. I'm not a criminal. I don't break the law. That's very, very manageable. It avoided me having to do multiple trips into Ottawa to do a trial. So, they had said that they were worried that I was going to cause problems. My lawyer denied all allegations, which then just led to a peace bond being signed. So I'm pretty well in the clear as long as I keep the peace and be of good behavior for 12 months. I feel it was a massive overreach, a massive exaggeration by the government to or whoever was deciding, given the powers to lay all these charges on us. So, it was ridiculous of how many charges. I think most of us had pretty well similar charges. It was multiple mischiefs. I think it was just an overreach and a power grab. And now that they've been losing or having to withdraw, I think that it's going to be easier for anyone else that's still fighting to have them withdrawn. Probably a year and a half ago, where they tried to offer me a deal. If I pled guilty to 2 mischief charges, I would get a year of probation, but I would have a criminal record. And I refused that one. That would have been about a year and a half ago. And then I had to get a new lawyer because I at the time I didn't know the difference really. As time has gone on, there has still not been one shred of evidence that has come out of any kind of violence. And that's what we were saying down there, was that we were not violent. We were just being Canadians, helping each other out, having food and hanging out. And we were portrayed as this massive organization that's taken down the government and trying to terrorize everybody. But as time goes on, I think it's making people wonder, why are all these people's charges getting dropped? And why is there still, after 2.5 years, not one shred of evidence of violence on our side? I am part of the lawsuit that we are going after. There's 21 or 22 of us, the class action, that are going after Trudeau, the police, and all the banks for freezing our bank accounts. So I decided to opt into that, as I think other people were afraid to, because it kind of puts a target on their back when you're going after the top organizations in a whole country, right? I chose to do that because I'm not afraid, right? I'm willing to fight that fight. Why I also did it is, not only did they freeze all of my businesses and all of my bank accounts, they also froze my family's bank accounts, which led to mortgages being missed. They weren't even there. At points, my family didn't quite understand why I was even there. So they weren't even involved. And they froze family bank accounts that were not even involved in what's going on, and I felt a duty to my family to continue this fight for them as well.
Mm-hmm. And so you're suing them, you say, for freezing the bank account, and what else?
I think that our class action lawsuit that we put in that, I think every what are we, claimants? Yes, we're claimants in that. All of us that are in there is specifically for frozen bank accounts. I don't think that there's anybody in there that was that got accepted into that lawsuit for violence done to them or them getting beat or other property damages. From my understanding is it's everybody in there is only in there for the freezing of the bank account.
The freedom leader of the Freedom Convoy are still facing charges of nonviolent mischief, like Tamara Lich, Chris Barber. But we are fighting along with Tamara Lich. You can help her if you want at helptamara.com. On this website, we have a crowdfund to help Tamara to pay for a lawyer, the best lawyer, to fight against those non-violent mischief charges. Go over, help us, and give what you can, and thank you in advance.